What's up, y'all? It's your boy Kairos, and today I'm bringing you the definitive guide for Enhancement Shaman and 11.2 for PvP. This spec is doing phenomenal right now. So just to get this right off the bat, we're going to be running the enchant that increases our stats, right? And does a little bit of damage. We're going to run speed on the bracers. We're going to run speed on the cloak. We're going to run speed on the boots. And depending on how your gear is lined up, now I pretty much already have full mastery. So I'm going to be running into haste, and I'm going to be running into versatility to be as tanky as possible and do more damage. As enhancement, 20 to 25% haste feels insane. It feels really good, especially with Tempest and the Strormbringer build. You always have Maelstrom coming in. So let's get right into it. As far as talents are concerned, I have two builds. I have the Primordial Wave build, and I have the old kind of build right here for enhancement that you kind of would run with everything else. So you got your frost damage, you got your wolves, you have your damage increase, you've got all your different things guaranteed, everything. Still have Legacy of the Frost, which is where Primordial Wave. I'm not really dipping into this, and you can change that if you want. This is just something I prefer because I like that guaranteed. Maelstrom from my builders, right? That's more of a personal preference. But the burst is pretty simple. The rotation's really simple as enhance. So just to start it off, and before we get into that, as far as tier is concerned, I'll open it up here. You're going to be running shoulders, chest, gloves, pants. You're going to ignore the headpiece because it has versatility and crit. Everything else has either mastery and haste on it or mastery and crit. Which crit is pretty useless for enhance, but it's actually kind of funny because you actually get a lot of crit just based off your PvP talents and just your normal tree. So like here, like Totem of Wrath with Primordial Wave actually does a lot of damage, and especially if you're critting it, it can actually do a lot of damage. And if people don't kill the totem, it does a lot. Okay, so, and just another thing to explain, Ascendance, there's two ways to look at Ascendance. Is it going to be a dampening game, or am I in a solo shuffle? If it's a dampening game, deeply rooted elements is always going to be better. Ascendance, the thing with Ascendance is most people are going to CC it right away. You can hold it and use like Doom Winds and Bloodlust, of course, and get a disarm, fear, whatever, and then you know you're good. So you can have less CC to eat, so you can actually do stuff. But I prefer deeply rooted elements, especially with all the haste values that are going to increase. So you're going to have more uptime with deeply rooted elements. That's just my personal thing. But if you're like in a solo shuffle, Ascendance was getting me about 2,400 last season in solo shuffle, and Strormbringer was terrible compared to Totemic last season, but now it's the go-to, right? Now that's where we're going. We got stats, we got all that out of the way. Wanted to explain Ascendance. So that's pretty much just the way it's going to go. Enhance is pretty straightforward. I always open with Flame Shock and then use Lava Lash, especially to get my Flame Shocks out of the way, because it doesn't feel good hitting a target without Flame Shock on it, and especially if they have pets, I can pretty much just tab target their pet and use it and spread it back, right? I can just refresh it on everything here. There we go. Everything's refreshed. And then I get that cooldown reduction on it. So pretty much here's going to be the way to burst. So like if I'm trying to protect my thing, I'll use Doom Winds here. I'll use Primordial Wave. I'll use all my cooldowns. Sometimes I won't even use Bloodlust because I like having that extra thing for haste. And this is pretty much it. I mean, you don't have to be perfect on 10 stacks. That's why I don't always like the Frost Witch thing. But pretty much my rotation is pretty much just going to follow a simple thing here. As you can see, even though everything else, I think the only thing you really want to get 10 stacks on is Tempest, just for the extra damage. But overall, this is pretty much just your rotation. I'm going to Primordial Wave. I'm going to Flame Shock everything. I'm going to get my 10 stacks and then burst again. Here we go. Got 10 stacks. Got a proc, got another proc. And this is pretty much it. Like, you're just min-maxing your damage. Put Flame Shock back up on the target. We got another 10 stacks. We got a proc from our thing. And that stuff does hit hard for the Flame Shock thing, so make sure you use that on cooldown. We want to maintain that buff on the thing. We're going to use Primordial Wave. We're going to use that second charge of Primordial Wave, and our tier set actually gives us Ascendance, so sometimes when you do get that, it does feel really good. And it does give you a guaranteed Tempest. So, you know, that's one thing with Tempest is it's really strong. There are things about to fall off. And maintaining that debuff up on the target is actually very important. You want to be able to maintain that buff. So even if you don't give out 10 stacks of Maelstrom, it's not the most important thing. I find it kind of equals out anyway, regardless if you're getting 10 stacks or not. That's just kind of my 2 cents. Primordial Wave. And this is pretty much just your full rotation. It's the same thing if you weren't running Ascendance, you know, on use Ascendance. And like, let's say if I got disarmed for that, then I would like burst, and then I'm going off, right? I'm going off with Ascendance. I might move away from them. I might use my Ghost Wolf or my Ghost Walk or whatever it's called, and just do something like this where I can still hit them and still have a big amount of damage, and I don't feel like I lose any uptime on the window on that. So it still feels really good to play Enhance. It feels even better to play it this season because of the talents and everything else, the stats. So, and there's a few other things that do change with the proc Ascendance, or not the proc Ascendance, but the rotation does change up a little bit for the Brawler one, and it just depends on what you're fighting. But it does help to know the difference. And there's one talent, and I think a lot of people don't really know the difference. So it's on cooldown, but we gotta wait for that. But basically, I'll explain it right here. Because instead of running this, all these talents here, we dip down to all this in here and Crash Lightning. Crash Lightning, I know it was a really strong spell last patch, but it's still a really strong spell this patch. And the thing with Crash Lightning is it's basically a fishing spell. And what I mean by that is when you use it, you are essentially either A, modifying your Storm Strike damage, or B, modifying your Wind Fury damage. So I know this is 25, but it's 10% in PvP, but it can stack up 6 times. And that's the thing with Enhance. Your Storm Strike damage is probably one of your highest damaging abilities now. It's not just a normal little spender that you're going to use. And I'll show you how that works. Essentially, Ascendance is almost off here off cooldown. So I'll switch to talents right now. And I'll kind of go into kind of how this will work. We do have Legacy of the Frost Witch. We'll run. I'm running Deeply Rooted Elements. So something like this, I would change it just kind of, oh, well, I want to lock someone down. I want to keep them down where I'm at if I get gripped from a priest or something like that. But since, okay, I know I'm going to be hitting multiple targets. I know I'm not just going to be hitting one. So I'm going to run Converging Storms, increases the damage of your next Storm Strike by 25%. Now, there's a way to look at this spell. And I see a lot of shamans don't do it all the time. But here's how I look at this spell. I try not to use it. I try to use my wolves. I try to use everything I have on use. Then use it, like here. And then just spam my thing. And just do this. I try to keep, so I'll usually pre-use it before I use Lightning Bolt. And the main reason is just to get that modifier on Storm Strike. So I got 10 stacks. I got an unused proc here. And that's pretty much it. I'm just using Crashing Storm to buff my damage with Storm Strike. Or not with Storm Strike, but yeah, pretty much Storm Strike. What am I saying? But pretty much whenever I'm pretty much using Wolves on cooldown. We get my 10 stacks, use my Lightning Bolt, Crash Lightning, Storm Strike. It just hit for 1,000,000. It can hit pretty hard, especially. So like Crash Lightning. Okay, yeah, we got a huge buff right there. As you can see, Our damage is really, really high with both builds. Or Storm Strike. So there's our Storm Strike damage. A modifier for 1.1 million. And we do offhand damage with this. And we get a proc from Stormblast. That's from our Mastery, which is also hitting incredibly hard. And then we have Wind Strike procs, Ascendance procs, and all these different things. Chain Lightning, that also does damage when we get Ascendance or when we use Ascendance. So those are the big things. Our best comps for, I would say, 2s are going to be probably, it's pretty simple. There's pretty much 3 classes you can play with, or 3 specializations. Right now, that's Windwalker Monk. They actually help us out a lot with damage, with surviving, because they can disarm they can run disarm. So they can disarm a warrior's cooldowns. So you can run more offensive talents, like Static and Totem of Wrath. They can disarm warrior cooldowns. They can sleep pets. They can do all kinds of stuff. So that helps. They can ring stuff. They can put someone up in a pinch up against the wall. That's always really toxic and good. Your next best one is probably going to be Discipline Priest. And the reason for Discipline Priest is because they have 2 charges of pain suppression. And that's one thing in 2s that's really good, especially with dampening starting at 40%. You need that 40%, and they have Fear, and they have MC, and they have damage. So that's a comp that has a lot of momentum and a lot of damage, and it has MD, or Mass Dispel, so you can get through a lot of classes like Paladins, stuff like that. You can get through Warriors with a lot of damage, force them to sit in D stance while you just sit on the Warrior's face, and while the Priest spams MC in between their Mind Blasts and stuff like that for their Siphene, so you're going to get damage and healing from that, from Atonement, their shields. And they have PS. They have a lot of good things. And you have Wall yourself, so that's 3 walls for you, especially if they can't get on your Priest and you're really annoying with Lightning Lasso, knockbacks, and stuff like that, right? So that feels really good. And then your 3rd is probably Resto Druid. Resto Druid, highly mobile, annoying, does a little bit of damage, has clone, has roots, can root your targets, can root pets, can do a lot of stuff, can actually help you connect a lot of the time. They have Bash, they have Rake, they have the other stun. I don't remember what it's called, but they pretty much have 3 stuns, right? If they build up their combo points, pretty useful healer to play with if you're playing with a good one. Sometimes when you're playing with one that when they clone your burst, you like want to freak out. You're like, what the hell are you doing? But anyway, those are probably your best 2s healers. 3s, some of your best comps, I would say, as far as casters, it's pretty much like Frost DK in the same way where you only pretty much want to work with a Demolock or a Hunter. And I would say the best 2 Hunter specs for you are probably going to be Survival. Survival has a lot of damage right now. Survival's doing really good right now, so it's just a natural cause for it. But I think with Enhance is also kind of squishy into other melee cleaves. So if you have someone else that's kind of squishy with you, it makes it kind of hard to survive that long. So it's not as good as BM Hunter. BM Hunter has a lot of damage, and it's been reworked to do more single target damage, especially with Beast Cleave, especially if your Hunter can land traps and you can land hexes every 30 seconds or off of DR, because you can still run short hex, and you can have a lot of momentum in a game where you're just doing unhealable damage, and you have team utility, and the Hunter has team utility, and you're giving the Hunter Bloodlust, and you're giving yourself Bloodlust, and you're just able to just do unhealable damage. And by the 2-minute marker, the enemy team is dead or under 1 minute. It feels really good. It's a really high momentum comp. They have damage reduction for you. They have a freedom for you. They have a lot of stuff to support you. And they have everything to support themselves. And you have stuff to support them too, like peeling for them with totems, grounding, grip, or grounding, roots, stuns, stuff like that. Lightning Lasso, knockback, the whole deal, right? So it feels really good. As far as other melee are concerned, you can run with the DH, but I don't really think that's the best option because DH is, again, they're squishy. But a really, really crazy one actually is Enhancement and Windwalker, because Windwalker doesn't healable damage, and when you're able to give them a ton of haste, they actually do incredible damage. And not just that, but they actually have decent CC, and they're relatively tanky themselves, and their defensive toolkit's really strong, and they can run things like disarm, have knockups, the whole thing to be really annoying for the other enemy team. And I would say the only thing that sucks between running that comp is you're kind of like the third wheel. You're kind of like the wheelchair, and they're not. So if you're fighting a comp where it has a lot of mobility, you can actually suffer a lot and not have the same amount of uptime. So that's one thing. Turbo Warrior Enhancement feels really good. Pretty much anything with Immortal Strike, you're good to go, right? That's how a lot of classes are. They need something like Enhancement, Ret, stuff like that. They need something with Immortal Strike. But that's pretty much one of your best comps for lower TI. Just do whatever you want. I mean, I've even seen double enhance work up to 2200. And they just run back to back with double lust, and they have 20 seconds of lust, which feels ridiculous. But anyway, so there is that, right? So we explained Ascendance, we explained the stats, we explained all that. So Enhance is feeling really good this patch. That's kind of my kind of thing. I'll have some macros down in the description, these two different builds, but I think as far as what's better is kind of the Primordial Wave build. I find I'm just doing way more damage with it. It's just, you get a lot of cleave with it, you get a lot of damage with it. It's just, you're able to do, Enhance is one of those specs. You either do a lot of damage or you kind of do nothing. You can have your moment, and then your damage just falls off. But in threes, your damage never ends. But in twos, it's like if you're taking it, you're taking it, or you're giving it out. So, but Enhance feels really good right now, and I hope you guys can enjoy this guide, the stats, everything. I'll put the macros down in the description, and they're pretty much self-explanatory. They're just placements or focus kicks, and you can make those into arena 1, 2, 3 macros, whatever you prefer. And I'll have that example down in the description down below as well. And you guys can have a good one. You guys have a good one now. Bye.